We are on the top of DAF Ches Amud Aleph, on the second line, Omar Mar. So what were we discussing yesterday? We said we saw a brisa yesterday that says that according to Beis Hillel, the Korban Chagiga can be brought from Meiser funds, from a Meiser situation. Now, at face value, that seems problematic because any obligatory carbon must be brought from Chulin. We have no problem with saying that Shalmei Simcha can be brought from pre-designated or pre-sanctified animals, because there, the Mishnah had said quite clearly, all the mitzvah is to enjoy sacrificial meat. So there's no specific carbon that you have to bring to fulfill the mitzvah of Shalmei Simcha. But the two karbanos that I have an obligation to bring on Yantiv are the Olas Re'iyah and Shalmei Chagiga, the Chagiga carbon. And that's supposed to be, as we learned, supposed to be brought lechatchila on day one. And if you didn't bring it on day one, you can make it up on all subsequent days of Yantiv. But that's an obligatory carbon. How then can Beis Hillel say that it can be brought from Meiser money? If it's an obligatory carbon, it should only be allowed to be brought from Chulin. That's our question. We left with that question yesterday, and now we're going to attempt to answer that question. Omar Mar, Beis Hillel Omrim min ha'ma'aser. So the Brisa quotes Beis Hillel as saying that your Korban Chagiga can be purchased from Meiser Sheni funds. Amai, davar shebechovahu. But why? It's an obligatory carbon. B'chol davar shebechova eno ba'ela min ha'chulin. And that therefore can only be purchased from Chulin money. So Omar Ula b'tofel. So Ula tells us an important principle, and that is you can be tofel. Now, to be tofel is that you can mix Chulin funds and Meiser funds together, and by combining them together, you can purchase even an obligatory carbon like the Korban Chagiga. Now, it seems like this is only a dispensation for the Chagiga, as we'll see. But let's now see what the definition of tofel really is. We have a machlokes exactly how you commingle the funds. So Chizkiya Omar, toflin behema lebehema, ve'ein toflin maos lemaos. So Chizkiya says the way you have to do it is you buy one animal that, in other words, let's say you have a lot of mouths to feed. So what you do is you buy a bunch of lambs, and let's say, you've got... You need 5 lambs to feed the mishpacha. Each lamb is $100, and you have $100 of chulin, and you have $400 of Meiser Sheni money. So you spend $100 on the first lamb, and you spend the other $400 on the other 4 lambs, and that way you've got one lamb. As long as one lamb is designated as the chagiga that's completely purchased from Chulin money, then all of the other Chagiga lambs that are going to feed the rest of the mishpacha could be from Meiser Sheni funds. That's the way Chizkiya learns what the term tofel means. You can combine it. You can combine Chulin with Meiser Sheni funds, provided that at least one animal is completely from Chulin. And the reason is for Chizkiya is that he feels, make sure that one animal has the pristine status of being purely purchased from Chulin. But Rabbi Yochanan looks at it the other way. Rabbi Yochanan Omar, and what you're not allowed to do according to Chizkiya is purchase one big animal that could feed the whole family, that is purchased from a combination of both Chulin and Meiser Sheni money. Rabbi Yochanan says just the opposite. He says toflin mos lemos ve'ein toflin behema lebehema. He says, no, I'd rather see just one animal, one big ram, let's say, that'll feed all 5 members of the family, but there should not be any one animal that is purchased exclusively from Meiser Sheni money. That's not appropriate. So as long as you have a commingling of funds to purchase that one animal, that, in my opinion, says Rabbi Yochanan, is preferable. Okay, so you see 2 different perspectives. Chizkiya's perspective is have one animal that's at least the pristine Chulin, from Chulin funds. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, I don't want any of the Chagiga designated animals to be purchased exclusively from Meiser Sheni funds, and therefore combine the funds together to make sure that no animal could be exclusively Meiser Sheni. So Tanya Kavase de Chizkiya, Tanya Kavase de Rabbi Yochanan. We have a brisa. We have 2 brises. Each brisa supports the other opinion. Tanya Kavase de Rabbi Yochanan Misas. The Torah says that about the Chag Shavuos, it says, "V'asisa Chag Shavuos l'Hashem Elokecha, misas nidvas yadecha asher titein." That you shall make a festival for of Shavuos. The word Chag refers to the Korban Chagiga. It should be for Hashem, and misas implies the word chulin, as we'll learn why later on. But it must be chulin from the gifts of Hashem which you give. So the Brisa says, "Melamed sha'adam mevi chovasa min hachulin." This teaches me that a person has to bring his Korban Chagiga, his obligatory Korban Chagiga, from chulin. Uminayin shimratza la'arev ma'arev. But how do you know that if you want to commingle the funds in the purchase of that one animal, that you have a right to do so? Tamulomar ka'asher yivarechecha Hashem Elokecha. The end of the pasuk says you can use, even though you have to use misas, which is chulin funds, but you could also use additional monies, all that Hashem blesses you with, which implies using Meiser Sheni funds as well from your assets. And therefore you see that you can commingle the funds. So that supports Rabbi Yochanan Shita, who says mingle the cash to buy one animal instead of buying separate animals, with some with chulin and some with Meiser Sheni. Now Tanya Kavase de Chizkiya, but now we have a brisa to support Chizkiya's position, because it says in the pasuk misas melamed sha'adam mevi chovasa min hachulin. This as well, same thing, teaches me that a person has to bring his Korban Chagiga from chulin. But now we have a machlokas Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai omrim yom rishon min hachulin. Beis Shammai say that whatever Korban Chagiga you bring on the first day has to only be from chulin funds. Mikan va'ilach min hamaaser. But from that point onwards, it can be from Meiser funds. So Beis Shammai is machmir, and as we know, we don't paskin like that, because if Ula said you could be tofel, you could use a combination of funds even on the first day. So clearly he's not going like Beis Shammai. But Beis Hillel omrim achila rishona min hachulin mikan va'elach min hamaaser. And Beis Hillel say, no, and this is what indicates that it's like Chizkiya. He says the first eating, which implies the first animal that you eat, should be exclusively from chulin, and all subsequent animals that you eat should be can be from Meiser Sheni funds. And then Beis Hillel adds another aspect, and he says, Ushar kol yemos haPesach adam yotze yedei chovaso b'maser behema. Period. All other days of the of the holiday, in addition to day one, you can fulfill your obligation with Meiser behema funds. Now, up until this moment, we never distinguished between Meiser Sheni money and Meiser behema. Now, what do I mean by Meiser Sheni money? Meiser Sheni money is when I have produce that's part of the Meiser Sheni tithe. I have to bring that produce up to Yerushalayim, or alternatively, I can transfer its holiness onto cash, bring those coins up to Yerushalayim, and purchase food in Yerushalayim. So that money is pre-sanctified, and the chiddush is that even though it's not chulin, I can use it towards the purchase of a korban chagiga, provided that my at least one animal, like Chizkiya says, is from exclusively chulin, right? But Beis Hillel say that you can only use Meiser Sheni funds, the agricultural Meiser Sheni funds, but you cannot use what's called Meiser behema, which means every 10th animal that comes out of my corral, I'm supposed to put a stripe of paint on the animal's back, and that designates the animal as Meiser behema, the animal tithe, and I'm supposed to bring that animal up to Yerushalayim for a korban. That's very different from Meiser Sheni funds. Meiser Sheni funds are funds that are from the agricultural yield. Meiser behema is from my livestock. Okay? So Beis Hillel make a distinction over here. Really, the two of them are pretty much of the same genre. They're pre-sanctified with a Meiser status. However, over here, Beis Hillel is making the following distinction. On the first day of Pesach, when I use non-chulin funds, which is permissible, I may only use Meiser Sheni funds. I may not use Meiser behema. I cannot take an animal that's my 10th tithed animal and use that for my korban chagiga. But for all subsequent days of Pesach or Sukkot, I'm allowed to use the Meiser behema animal itself as the korban chagiga, as long as I supplement it with something that's purchased exclusively from chulin. So the question is, why this distinction? Why does Beis Hillel not permit you to use Meiser behema on the first day of Yom Tov, and only permits you to use Meiser Sheni funds on the first day of Yontif.
What does Rishon mean? In other words, what happens if you're late? You didn't get the Pesach for the first day. Is it your Rishon or is it Rishon Shal Pesach?
It's the Rishon Shal Pesach. We learned this before. The first day is when the mitzvah of Korban Chagiga is, and every subsequent day is a makeup. You have Tashlumin.
Right, but I'm saying you didn't get there for the first day of Pesach.
So then you make it up. You make it up
your
on
first day. Your first day could be the second day.
There's an absolute first day of Pesach.
There's an absolute first day.
There's an absolute first day. That's when the mitzvah is lechatchila. You didn't do it because you didn't make it to the Beis HaMikdash in time. You have Tashlumin. You can make it up. We're going to learn more about this in a moment.
Would your Tashlumin be the equivalent of the first day in terms of how you acquire this behemoth? In terms of the funds you use, in other words?
No, this is what we're learning now. The Brisa says that on Yontif itself, if you want to be able to use non-chulin funds, you can only use Meiser Sheni money. On the days 2 through 7, if you want to be able to use non-chulin funds, you can either use Meiser Sheni money, or you can use Meiser Behema. Those are the two. You have two choices instead of only one choice. So the question that the Gemara is asking is, why is there a difference between day 1 and days 2 through 7 as far as the non-chulin financial instruments that you're allowed to use? So that's Gemara's question. B'yom tov my time alo. Why is it that on Yontif, the first day, you're not allowed to use Meiser Behema? Amar Ravashi dilma asi li isurei b'yom tov v'yefshel la'aser b'yom tov mishum sakarta. The answer is because we're worried that you may come to tithe the animals on Yontif itself. Because let's say you live nearby Yerushalayim, so you're going to go to the Beis HaMikdash today to be able to bring your Korban Chagiga. Someone tells you, hey man, you're allowed to use, as long as one of the animals is chulin, you can bring the other animals as meiser. So you'll say to yourself, oh, great. But you know what? I didn't have a chance to tithe my animals before Yontif. Let me tithe them quickly now, so I'll be able to bring them now for the Korban Chagiga. Well, you're not allowed to tithe on Yontif. Not only you're not allowed to tithe on Yontif, but there's an additional factor when it comes to Meiser Behema of painting the animals back, which involves the malacha of tzoveya. So therefore, you're not allowed to do that. That's why the rabbi said, just bichlal, you can't use Meiser Behema as a korban on Yontif.
That paint comes off easily because
I don't know if it comes off easily.
No, the reason I'm saying is because we're bring an animal with paint on it to the Beit HaMikdash.
So what?
It's not a mum, is what he's saying.
It's not a mum. No.
They all have paint on it. They all have paint.
Meiser Simcha is just to have flesh on Shabbat.
Yeah, Shalmei Simcha.
That's different, yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So now the Gemara's question is, "My mashma dahay misas lishna dechulin hu." So now the question is, we learned in this brisa that the word misat means chulin funds. That was the basis for both brises. Where do you see that the word misat means chulin? Dechsiv vayosan hamelach Achashverosh mas al haaretz. The very end of the book of Esther says that King Achashverosh imposed a tax upon all the inhabitants of Persia, the Persian Empire. So that implies that it's something that you pay from your bank account. That's what misas, that's what the word mas means. And so therefore it implies that it's from your regular income, which is chulin. Okay, next. Yisrael yotzin yedei chavasin b'nedarim u'nedavos. The last thing we had seen in the Mishnah is that when it comes to the mitzvah of Shalmei Simcha, you can fulfill your mitzvah of Simcha by eating any kind of meat, even pre-sanctified meat, such as Nedarim and Nedavos, karbanos that you already had pledged as voluntary offerings. And if you're a Kohen, you can even use the meat that you get to eat from other people's sin offerings, or from an animal that's offered as a Bechor Korban, or from the Chazei V'Shok, or from the chest and the thigh, that is the Kohen's right to take from everyone's Korban. Tanu Rabbanan, V'samachta b'chagecha. So the Brisa now says, you shall rejoice on your holiday. L'rabos kol minei semachos l'simcha. This tells me that I can use whatever meat I have available to me to rejoice. Mikan omru chachomim Yisrael yotzen yidei chovasen b'nedarim u'nedavos u'v'meiser be'ema v'hakohanim b'chatas v'ashem u'v'bechor v'chazei v'shov. That's the basis for our Mishnah, that the rabbi said that you can fulfill the mitzvah of Simcha if you're a Yisrael with nedarim and nedavos karbanos, and if you're a Kohen, even with other people's sin offerings, with meiser behema karbanos, with I'm sorry, that's even for Yisrael, and with a bechor and with the chest and the thigh. So yachol af ba'ofus u'v'menachos. Now you might think that you're also allowed to be yotzei the mitzvah of simcha with birds and with flour, right? So therefore, Talmud Lomar v'samachta b'chagecha. Therefore, the Torah connects the mitzvah of simcha to the word chag. The word chag implies korban chagiga. So misha chagiga ba'amehem yatzu elu shein chagiga ba'amehem. So therefore, you see that the mitzvah of simcha can only be accomplished with the flesh of a creature that can be used as a korban chagiga. And just like we learned yesterday from Rashi, the Torah says by chagiga v'lo yalin chelev chagi ad boker. Do not leave over the fats of the korban chagiga. That means only an animal that has chelev. What animals have chelev? Not birds and certainly not flour. So therefore we see that just like the korban chagiga has to be an animal with red meat, so too the shalmei simcha, the mitzvah of simcha that you fulfill, can only be fulfilled with red meat.
The Gemara didn't actually say this yesterday, it was just Rashi. This
right.
is how it's saying it.
Yeah. Well, the Gemara had said this also, but it didn't say the source. How do we know that a chagiga can only be brought from an animal? Ravashi Omer me v'samachta nafka yatzu elu she'ein bahem simcha. Ravashi is a meat and potatoes kind of guy. He says you don't even need the word b'chagecha to teach you that. The word simcha, by definition, implies that which gives you joy. Poultry, fish, flour. Come on, they don't give you joy. Ravashi would always go to the prime grill. He didn't. He wouldn't go for this vegetarian stuff. He didn't go for the sushi or the other stuff. He says, come on, man, what gives you joy in life? Red meat. It's the only thing that gives you joy. You don't even need the word b'chagecha, because inherently, the things that give you the most joy in life is red meat, as far as food is concerned.
And you use cholesterol too.
Cholesterol. Well, they say there's good cholesterol also, as long as you eat it in moderation.
Not red meat is not.
What?
Not red meat is not good cholesterol.
Who said? No one says that?
No.
That's today. Next year, someone will come out and say that red meat is good for you.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying there's no good cholesterol in it.
Okay. Now, the Ravashi, the Brotherhood would go for Ravashi, right? He would be a member of the Brotherhood. So, the Ravashi, Hai b'chagecha mai avidlei. So the question then is, so what does he need the word b'chagecha for? If just intrinsically v'samachta implies red meat, so what does he need the word b'chagecha? So hahulach Rav Daniel bar Katina. The Amar of Daniel bar Katina Amarav minayin sheinosin nashim b'moed shenamar v'samachta b'chagecha v'lo b'ishtecha. That there's a separate limud. That b'chagecha is a miyut. You only rejoice with your holiday to the exclusion of rejoicing for some other purpose, which means for marriage. This teaches me that you cannot get married on Chol HaMoed. Now we know it more in the terms of the way that Chazal speak. Ein ma'arvin simcha b'simcha. You're not supposed to combine two simchas together, the simcha of the holiday and the simcha of marriage. But what's the source for it? What's the scriptural source? B'samachta b'chagecha. Only rejoice with your chag, do not rejoice with anything else.
I thought they were going to say you had to serve fleishiks, not poultry at a wedding.
That's right. Right. Okay.
You can get engaged on Chaim.
You get engaged, right? Shema yikad menu acher, right? But not marriage itself. Okay. Next mission.
Women could be offended by this statement.
Who would be offended?
Women.
All right.
Because it says, so except you, we could have a holiday too. You know?
Yeah. Well,
we could have a chag.
That's right. That's right. I don't think the Gemara is advocating that you shouldn't rejoice with your wife on the chag, but to create the new simcha of marriage, we don't allow. Next mission. Now, this Mishnah is actually qualifying a statement that we made in the Mishnah, previous Mishnah. Previous Mishnah said that according to Beis Hillel, you're supposed to spend twice as much on your shlamim than you do on your ola. They said if you're going to spend 2 silver coins on your shlamim, spend 1 coin on the ola, right? But this Mishnah is not going to qualify this. I mean, not necessarily all the time, because it depends on how many eaters you have and how much funds you have. Let's see. Let's say you have limited funds and you have a lot of mouths to feed. So in that situation, what should you do? You should purchase a lot of animals for your shlamim, for your shalmei chagiga, and you should purchase the minimum for your ola, because the ola no one's going to be able to eat. You got a lot of mouths to feed. But nechasim merubim va'ochlim mu'atim. But let's say you're a very wealthy person. it's just you and your wife, and you're a billionaire, so you got a lot of money, but you got very few people that are going to partake of the korban. So maybe olos merubos ushlamim mu'atim. Then you should bring more olas than shlamim, because why not? You know, like you don't have enough people to eat the meat, right? It's like the couple that goes on the Pesach program, right? They're just by themselves, so let them do more olas than shlamim. Zeh v'zeh mu'at al zeh ne'amar ma'a kesef shtei kesef. Now, if you have limited funds and limited people to eat, you don't have a lot of mouths to feed, but you don't have a lot of money. That's where Beis Hillel says that spend 1 silver coin on the Ola and 2 silver coins on the Shlomim. But Zev is Merubin, but if you have a lot of mouths to feed, and Baruch Hashem, not only has Hashem blessed you with a big family, but He's also blessed you with lots of money, Al Zeh Nemar, Ish Kimatenas Yado Ki Virkas Hashem Elokecha Asher Nasamach. Upon such a person, the Torah pronounces each person according to the gift of his hand as the blessing of Hashem that He has given to you. So Baruch Hashem, you can look at a person who's got a big family, Kanai Nahara, he's got a lot of money, Kanai Nahara, so that person should spend a lot of money on Shlomim, he should spend a lot of money on Olos, and there's really no limit. The Gemara now says, Shalomim Merubim Mehecha Maisi Halesle. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. You're telling me that if a person has a lot of mouths to feed, he should purchase a lot of Karbano Shlomim. But if you tell me that he's on a limited budget, he's got a lot of mouths to feed and he's on a limited budget, where's he going to get all the money to purchase the Shlomim from? Amar Rav Chisda Toivel Umevi Par Gadol. So Rav Chisda says, just like we learned before, Ula said Tofel. What do? Look, you've only got $100 of chulin that you can afford for the karbanos, but you've got $400 worth of Meiser Sheni money that you had to bring up to Yerushalayim anyway because you're the farmer. So that's why you're tofel. So you take $500, you purchase a really big ram, and with the $100 of chulin and the $400 of Meiser Sheni money, and you invest that all into the $500 ram, and there's plenty of food to eat for the ganze mishpacha. Amarle Rav Sheishas, Aryai Amru Toflin Behema LeBehema. So Rav Sheishas says, I disagree. After all, the rabbi said that when you're tofel, you should be tofel from one animal to the next. Now the question is, Maika Amarle, what is Rav Sheishas actually disagreeing with Rav Chisda? Ilema Hachi Ka Amarle Haray Amru Toflin Behema LeBehema Avolo Mos Lemaos. If you're going to tell me that what he meant to tell Rav Chisda is, Rav Chisda, you're making a mistake. You are going like Rabbi Yochanan, who says you commingle the funds to purchase one big animal. But according to Chizkiah, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to commingle the funds. You should have at least one animal that is pristine as chulin. And all the other animals you can purchase from Meiser Sheni funds. Well then, V'lei Molei ain't Toflin Mos Lemos. If that's his point of disagreement, he should have said more emphatically and more directly, no, you're not allowed to commingle funds to purchase your Korban Chagiga. There's got to be at least one animal that's completely purchased from chulin money. That's what he should have said to him. So Elahachi Amarle, but rather what he means to say to him is, Hare Amru Af Toflin Behema LeBehema. So what he means to say, Rav Chisda, when he argues with Rav Sheish, what Rav Sheish means to say when he's arguing with Rav Chisda is, I hold you have the choice. You, Rav Chisda, say that you're only allowed to go like Rabbi Yochanan, who says that you can only commingle the funds to purchase one big animal. But you're not allowed to purchase one intact animal that's purely from Meiser Sheni money. I disagree. I hold that you have a choice. You can either commingle all the funds in order to buy one big animal, or you can keep the funds, the chulin funds, separated from the Meiser Sheni funds, use the chulin to purchase one animal, and use the other funds to purchase your other animals. You can choose either one. You can either go like Chizkiah or like Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara says, come on, de lo ke Chizkiah, de lo ke Rabbi Yochanan. So then the question is, well, how can Rav Sheishas say that? And it turns out that he's paskening neither like Rabbi Yochanan nor like Chizkiah, because Rabbi Yochanan says you can only commingle funds, you cannot purchase separate animals, and Chizkiah says you cannot commingle funds, you can only purchase separate animals. How can he say that? It's your choice to do either or. We don't find that either Chizkiah or Rabbi Yochanan hold that way. But maybe you'll tell me, what's the big deal? Rabbi Yochanan and Chizkiah are Amoraim. Rav Sheishas is an Amora. Why can't he disagree with him? And he says, I have a third opinion. But the Gemara says that only helped to defend his position against Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan. But masniyasa lo pligi. But what about the brises that we brought? We brought one brisa to support the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. We brought another brisa to support the opinion of Chizkiah. But each brisa seems to be saying that you only have one option. We haven't found a brisa that says that you have two options. V'haketani achila rishona min hachulin. So what about the brisa? It says achila rishona min hachulin, which sounds like you're saying that your first animal must be completely from chulin, and all like Chizkiah says, and only the subsequent animals can be from Meiser Sheni money. So the Gemara says no. You know how Rav Sheshis will learn that brisa? My achila rishona shir demei achila rishona min hachulin. He'll learn that brisa is really telling you can do either or. Because when it says achila rishona min hachulin, that the first eating must be from chulin, either means that you have one animal that's exclusively chulin and all subsequent animals are Meiser Sheni animals, or it means that you purchase one big animal, and in the first portion of the animal, meaning for one person's portion, there's enough chulin money that was invested into that one animal to make up one person's portion. That's another way of understanding that brisa. And if that's the way we interpret the brisa, then it turns out that the brisa is giving you the either-or option. You can either commingle your funds to purchase one big animal, or you can keep the chulin and the Meiser Sheni fund separate and purchase separate animals. And that's exactly how Reb Sheshis holds. Amar Ula Amar Reish Lakish. Hifrish Eser Behemos L'Chagigaso. Hikriv Chamesh B'Yom Tov Rishon Chozer U'Makriv Chamesh B'Yom Tov Sheni. Now we have another interesting discussion between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Now we know that the mitzvah of Korban Chagiga is supposed to be brought on day one of Yantif. If you neglected to bring it on day one, you have tashlum and you have makeup days from days 2 to 7. So now, here's the following scenario. The case is, Reish Lakish says that if a person set aside 10 animals for his Korban Chagiga, he sets aside 10 animals, let's say. Okay, good. He brings 5 of them on day 1. What is he supposed to do with the remaining 5? He goes to bed after he brings 5 karbanos. Can he now bring the other 5? Reish Lakish says, yeah, gesundheit hate. You want to spread out your Korban Chagiga over 2 days? No problem. However, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Kivan Shapasak Shuveino Makriv. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, you can't do that. There's a problem of what? Of Bal Tosif. The Torah says that you're not allowed to add on to a mitzvah unnecessarily. If the Torah says that there's one day of bringing your Korban Chagiga, which is day 1, and if you didn't bring it day 1, you can bring it day 2. And if you didn't bring it day 2, bring it day 3. But if you already brought your Korban Chagiga on day 1, then you can't bring it again on day 2. That's like sitting in the sukkah an extra day. It's Bal Tosif. So there's a whole discussion whether Bal Tosif applies to chronologically sequential events, but apparently according to this, the way Rashi's learning at least this whole sugya, Rashi learns that this is a problem of Bal Tosif. Okay? So now the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Abba velo pligi. Rabbi Abba says, even though it looks like Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish disagree, but they really don't. Kan bistam, kan b'mefaresh. He says it works like this. When you just say that these animals are going to be for my Chagiga, and you don't specify when you plan to bring them, so then, once you bring 5 on day 1, you're not allowed to bring the other 5 on day 2. Everyone agrees to that. But if you're mefaresh, and you say, I hereby intend that these are all my Korban Chagiga for day 1, and you say explicitly that that's your intention, then the fact that you only brought 5 on day 1 means that something happened. You had some kind of mishap, or you ran out of time, or you had to go to the bathroom, or your wife was calling you. Something happened, you couldn't bring the other 5. And there the Torah says that it's not Bal Tosif anymore to bring it on day 2. It's not like your intention was to do the mitzvah twice on day 1 and day 2. You meant to bring all 10 on day 1, but you ran out of time. In that situation, then the continuing karbanos is really like the makeup for what you had intended to bring on day 1. And since we allow makeups, we just don't allow you to do the mitzvah twice, this is really a makeup for day 1, and then it's perfectly fine. So, hai stam hechidami. Now let's talk about this first case where you don't designate what day you plan to bring the animal on. You say, these are my 10 animals for my Korban Chagiga, and you don't say anything more. So what's the case? Ilema deleka shos bayom lekarev, hai delo akarvinu deleka shos bayom. So if you tell me that he brings the first 5, and then at Shkia he runs out of time and the sun sets. Well, why not let the guy bring it on the following day? It's clearly self-evident from this scenario that he planned to bring all 10, but he ran out of time. So let him just do the makeup on day 2. The Ella de Leslie Ochlin, Hai de Loa Carvinu de Leslie Ochlin. And the other alternative is maybe he set aside 10 animals. He thought that there would be enough mouths that would be able to consume the meat of all 10, but then he ran out of eaters. Like he thought the guys would have a big appetite, and it turns out that they don't have the appetite. So then there too, it's not that his intention specifically was to spread the mitzvah over 2 days. Give the guy a break and let him make it up on day 2 because he ran out of people to eat the animal. So the Gemara says the only time this should be really a problem is if you had a deliberate, it's self-evident that you deliberately want to break the mitzvah up over 2 days when it's only supposed to be brought over 1 day. But if you run out of time or you run out of eaters, what's the problem of continuing it on day 2? So the Gemara says, Lo tzricha di'ika shahus b'yom v'islei ochlin. So the Gemara says we're talking about a case where there's plenty of time left in the day to bring the other 5. There are still hungry mouths that you could still feed. And a guy says, you know what? I'm going to save the other 5 to tomorrow. That's where we say, no, you can't do that. B'kama lo akrivinu shma mina shiyurei shayurinu. The fact that he says, you know what, I can still continue, but I choose not to, means that you want to fulfill the mitzvah of Chagiga over 2 days instead of over 1, and that is illicit. That's what we don't allow you to do. And therefore, if you only offered 5 on day 1, you can no longer offer these in the realm of Korban Chagiga on day 2. Someone asked me this morning, so then what happens to these animals? It's not clear to me from the Gemara what happens. It could be that you have to, since they were designated as Chagiga, and you can't let them come, then it could be you have to let them go out to pasture and let them develop a mum and be po to them. That's what I would assume, but I don't know for sure.
But did he fulfill his mitzvah?
He did the mitzvah already. He did 5 already on day 1. He fulfilled the mitzvah. He was Mekayim the mitzvah.
10 of them at that.
He set aside 10, but he didn't do it right. So over zmanu batal karbano. He's not. He can't. It's too late. What?
You let it hang in the pasture?
No. You would let it graze until it develops a mum, and then you transfer the kedusha onto coinage, and then you purchase other korban shlamim with the coins. That's what I would assume has to be done over here.
Can't you transfer the money right away, like sell it right away and use the money?
No, you can't sell it right away because you can't take off kedusha saguf off of an animal until it develops a mum.
You can't say that he's a ben chuslaretz, he keeps 2 days.
It makes sense to say this, says the Gemara. Dechi asa Rabin Amar Rabbi Yechanan hifrish eser behemos lachagigaso hikriv chamesh biyom tov rishon chozer makriv chamesh biyom tov sheni. So you have to say that because you have to say that Rabbi Abba says that Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish don't argue, because we have another statement of Rabbi Yochanan quoted by his Talmud Rabbin, who says that if a person sets aside 10 animals and he offers 5 on the day 1 and the other 5 on day 2, that's perfectly fine. Rabbi Yochanan had previously said you can't offer the other 5 on day 2, kashina hadadi, elalav shma mina, kan bistam, kan b'mefari shma mina. So you have to say that even Rabbi Yochanan agrees that when you specify that all 10 are for day 1 and you only offered 5 on day 1, it means something happened and you couldn't bring it. So therefore Rabbi Yochanan permits you to continue. It's only when you didn't designate that they were for day 1, and it therefore has the appearance that you're trying to spread a 1-day mitzvah over 2 days, where we don't allow you because of the Baal Tosef issue. Itmar Nami, Amar of Shaman Bar Abba, Amar of Yechanan, Lo Shanu Ela Shelo Gomar. So the Brisa, or it's not a Brisa, but rather Rabbi Yochanan was quoted as saying that the only time we say that you can only celebrate with the Korban Chagiga on day 1 is Ela Shelo Gamar, is if you haven't finished. Avol Gamar Chozer Umakriv. But if you finished, then you can go back on day 2 and continue offering. So my Gamar, what does that mean that you finished? Ilay Magobar Karbanosov, if you're going to tell me you finished all your Karbanos on day 1, so then my Makriv, what are you going to bring on day 2? What does it mean that if you finished on day 1, you can bring on day 2? If you finish your Karbanos, obviously you can't, you got nothing more to bring. So Ela Shelo Gamar Hayom. But what it means is that if the day finished, if the day hasn't finished, you still have plenty of time left in the day, and you choose of your own volition to not continue with the additional 5, so then we don't allow you to do it on day 2. Aval Gomer Hayom, but if you ran out of time because the sun set and the day's over, there it's self-evident that your intention was to bring all 10 on day 1, but you ran out of time, then we allow you to choser makar, then we allow you to continue. Have a wonderful day.